So just by a quick show of hands, how many people here today were at the last town hall? Quite a few, okay. And how many people are new? Fair bit of new people. Thanks for coming out. So the last town hall for the new folks here, what we covered was sustainable development. And I'll just ask you guys all really quick, not the people who were at the last presentation, because that's unfair, but to the new people, do you guys know what sustainable development means?
No.
You have a fairly good idea?
It's a nice word to use during disaster.
That's one definition. It might be more close to the truth than we'd like to think. So what we're going to do is we're going to expand on this idea of sustainable development, and we're going to show how it's affecting our government. I'll give you real-time examples. I just pulled one out of the news today, so it's going to be relevant. And yeah, before I get into that, just who am I? So I'm Jeff Snicer, born and raised here in Kamloops, BC. I've got some fancy letters at the end of my name. But that's not why you should listen to me. You should listen to me because I love Canada and I want a great future for my kids. And for everyone, really. Thank you very much. So tonight, we're going to go through 5 sections. We'll do a quick recap on what is sustainable development. We're going to talk about government versus governance. We'll talk about some examples of who and what are influencing the Kamloops government. Then we'll go through our members update. So we did go to the City Council at the last meeting on the 26th. We'll have some footage from that for you guys to watch. And then we'll talk about some solutions. After that, I'm not sure if you covered this, if we're redoing it, but did you cover it?
Q&A, yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be a quick Q&A and then the floor is just open and we can all have a big chit chat at the end here. So I'm going to make some claims here today. I'm going to say that governance is actually government. I'm going to say that sustainable development is the governance of everything, literally everything in our lives. I'm also going to make the claim that outside influence, even if the people that are doing it have good intentions, is potentially and more likely than not bad for Kamloops. And I'm going to give an example of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities acting as a foreign influence on our local government, which is the opposite of what they're supposed to do. So for those of you new, you might think sustainable development, what is it? And you start thinking about the environment. That's kind of what it's sold as when you hear about it in the media. That's what it was first talked about 30 years ago when it came out. But that definition has changed. The modern definition of sustainable development, it's called Agenda 2030, and there's 17 sustainable development goals. They're put out by the United Nations. And what I would say it is an integrated management and reporting system to push forward policies from up top, down, and have the entire world in alignment, culturally, socially, economically, environmentally. So these are policies on everything from poverty, hunger, health, resources, energy, water, equity, gender, education, economy. It's everything. Now, we talked a little bit about how it's everything and it's nothing. But also here, this is the Federal Sustainability Act from the Government of Canada. And they're telling us what it is. And they say that the principle that sustainable development is based on an efficient use of natural, social, and economic resources. It's not just talking about nature. It's talking about social and economic resources. And the need for the Government of Canada to integrate environmental, economic, and social factors in making all of its decisions. So we're starting to get the sense here that sustainable development is not just about the environment. And of course, in the yellow there, they tell us it's a continually evolving concept about everything. It cannot be defined, but we are going to make every single decision in our lives through the government, through the new concept, which can't be defined because it's always evolving. So this is what this funky little wheel looks like. If you see some of our government officials, if you watch the news, you see them wearing a rainbow circle. That's what it is. It's from the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals. And I don't know if you guys can make that out. Apologize for the lighting here, but this nice little Venn diagram. And there's 3 circles. The one on the top is environment. The one on the bottom left is social, and on the side is economic. And in the middle of that Venn diagram, they're saying the convergence of the government looking after these 3 things is what's called sustainable development. more evidence it's not just about the environment. But what I want you guys to think of is, how is the government going to do this? What is the abstract concept? What's the base concept that we're talking about? And that is a government-managed environment, government-managed social values, and a government-managed economy. And in the middle there, you just have full government management. So I'm going to make the claim here that sustainable development is governance, pardon me. So governance versus government. We had a meeting before we put this meeting on for you guys. We had a structure and a plan, that's governance, okay? Anybody who's telling you what to do or planning something out, that's governing how something works. And this definition here is from the Kamloops Food and Urban Agriculture Plan. It says that governance refers to all processes of governing, whether undertaken by a government, market, or network, family, tribe, formal, informal, organization, or territory. So governance is governing, and that's what we think as citizens when we elect someone, that's what we expect the government is doing. Okay? But I'm just going to go ahead and say that governance is government, because they're doing the same thing. And I'm going to make a big leap here. Okay? You guys come with me. We're taking a big logical leap. I'm going to say that anyone or anything providing governance to our government is an unelected form of government. It's bypassing democracy. Do you think we can make that? It's not that far. But that's kind of the basis of what we're going to talk about, and that's why sustainable development is so important to understand. Does anybody know who that is? Socrates? So we're going to talk a little bit about philosophy, the philosophy of governance. So, number one, the form of government closest to the people is always the most legitimate. Okay? You can see the person you're voting for, you know their name, maybe you even know where they live. If the local government can't govern, then what they do is they delegate their power upwards, they ask for help, and just common sense tells you that local government should be the most important one in your life. This brings us to a concept called subsidiarity. The definition of subsidiarity is a principle that central authority should have a subsidiary function performing only the tasks which cannot be done by the local government. So subsidiary means it's less important. You get to that one after you've exhausted what your local government can do. This is a big concept in international law and human rights law. Like, we could do a 4-hour presentation just on this word, so I'm simplifying things a bit. But when we talk about decision-making authority, subsidiarity says that it should be held as close as possible to the people whose lives are being affected by the decisions. So when we're talking about sustainable development and all the changes that are happening, whose lives are being affected? It's us guys here in Kamloops. Guys and girls, pardon me. Okay, it provides guidance over the division and separation of powers. The nation state is essentially the sum of its parts. It has derived its authority from the lower levels, not the reverse. These are legal opinions. The nation state itself is only legitimate so long as it is held legitimate by the lower levels of government. Okay, it's bottom up. That's how government's supposed to work. Do no harm. At the national level, it exists only to serve the common interests of the members and the other governments below it. And then higher governments cannot pursue policy, legislation, or other activities that hinder or harm the lower levels. And then this is where we start talking about jurisdiction, and this is where this word can be flipped upside down and the meaning can be turned around on us. Jurisdiction, if there's something that the Kamloops government can't do, we can say, hey, provincial government, federal government, we need your help. So we're delegating the authority to look after the citizens up to the next level because they've got power. Like a good example of that would be national defense. Do we want to worry about that in Kamloops? Probably not, so we delegate that to the federal government. Okay, but here it says that when the decision affects a wider group of people, like in a natural disaster, then we delegate it up. And that's what's being used as the excuse for sustainable development, because they say the whole world, it's everybody. Everybody's in trouble. Therefore, we have to do all this stuff. So you can't argue against it. And that brings me to this point. I just want to talk about collective rights versus individual rights. So when we're talking about these rights, collective rights of everyone in the entire world because global warming, it's not defined, it's undefinable, just like the entire concept of sustainable development is undefinable. So now we're reorienting our entire society towards undefinable goals. There's no start point, there's no end point, it's always changing, and we've accepted that fact. But also, because it's everybody's rights, that means it's nobody's rights. And then if you look at the definitions from the United Nations, they talk about human rights. They control the individual for the common good. Rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Like, that's the kind of thinking that you get when you align with the United Nations. And I'm going to say that accepting this thinking that collective rights are important is like writing a blank check. There has to be a limit. You have to set a limit and say collective rights to this point. It has to be defined. And if it's not defined, you're just giving your rights away.